Evan Wick joins us on the Athletor Podcast this week. Dude, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I know it's been a long time trying to get me on with Fargo, and I'm moving houses and everything, but great to be on. First podcast in a while.
You brought up Fargo. Were you in Fargo?
I was not in Fargo. I was watching though.
Okay. Did you compete in Fargo?
I competed in Fargo every single year, and I placed my junior and senior year.
Okay.
But it's probably one of the best high school tournaments you can compete at.
Why?
Now that I look back,
I have my thoughts, but I'm just curious as to why you say that.
I mean, every state is bringing the top guys there, and when I think of like a marquee tournament that every single coach uses to determine if a kid is legit, it's Fargo. Like there may be some tournament in the East Coast, like we have the Battle for the Belt here. Like Doc B is a great tournament, but if a coach hears that you're an All-American or you won a bunch of matches at Fargo, that goes a long, long ways. I mean, there's very few like not tough weight classes at Fargo. I've never heard a coach say, "Yeah, he placed it at Fargo, but it wasn't really that tough of a weight." You know what I mean?
Yeah, that doesn't really exist, does it? One of the things that I've kind of noticed is that shift. So when you were competing in Fargo, the making a world team wasn't as big of a priority as it is now. I think because of that, the junior division Fargo has kind of, I don't want to say suffered, but I think the kids that are in the cadet, what do they call it now, 16U division, are unbelievable. They're absolutely the cream of the crop. But I'm seeing so. Whereas when you were competing, the top guys are still just as good at the junior division, but the guys that are on the bubble, even maybe the top 8 guys in most weight classes, are just as good as 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. But I think the bubble guys, the depth of the bracket is it's just not there. The guys are really focused on those world team spots, and it's hard to get a senior in high school who's committed to go to Fargo and lay it on the line. You lose stock at a tournament like that. Is it something that you've noticed for the year, or is it just my recency bias?
I haven't noticed it until you just said it, but that certainly now it seems like the juniors is probably the marquee tournament, because high school kids can now, it seems like they can compete substantially better at the college level and the 20 under level better than I could, or anyone my age could. Mark Hall kind of kickstarted that. Dayton Fix was one who could compete very well. But when I was in high school, yeah, Fargo was absolutely the tournament. It seemed like you would rather be a Fargo champ than be a world team member. And I don't know, maybe it also has something to do with, it seems like kids in the United States are competing so much better internationally than I was. And I don't know if maybe that's just we didn't care about it, or now we're only caring about it because we can compete. But it seemed like the USA sent a bunch of kids to Pan Ams, and it was like 9 out of the 10 weight classes were Pan Am champs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I think if you build it, they will come, right? UWW bringing back the Cadet World Championships in, I think it was 2011, 13, something like that. It gave kids an eye-opening experience, right? Like you can go to Fargo. You can spend your 12 days in the summer in Fargo, North Dakota. You definitely can. Or you hear me out. You can spend 4 days, 5 nights, 5 days, 6 nights, something like that, in Rome, winning a world title against the absolute best in the world, the best in the world, by the way. And it's not like Russia's bringing their B team, and it's not like Azerbaijan is bringing their B team, and India, right? Like India's made a concerted effort toward winning age group world titles, whether it be by cheating or not, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the point is, it's just UWW set the ball rolling, and we want to win. And as Americans, we want to win everything. Like, it's not like we're going to take an age group off, right? Just because we can. No, we want to win everything. I think when we started placing emphasis in this country at a young age, that's what is it, U17 for UWW. When we started placing emphasis, like, hey, we're going to win these U17 world championships, we saw a tremendous uptick in the wrestling IQ, international wrestling IQ, in a lot of these kids, and it's interesting to watch as far as I'm concerned.
You know what's funny though? You talk about you can either go to Fargo or go to Rome. I always thought that was in the moment it was pretty tough going to Fargo, but it's always something that I look back on. It was so cool because it was like 95 degrees outside. It's 85 degrees at night. There's no AC in the dorms. You're cutting weight. It was just ridiculous. I remember like showering off a towel and using this wet towel as a blanket because my body was so hot. I was like overheating, cutting weight at Fargo. But it just made it so gritty, and it was almost like all these wrestlers are together in just like the worst environment possible, just scrapping to be national champions. And it's like usually when you think of a national competition, it's these kids are being pampered. I remember one of my teammates got a hotel with his mom, and I was like, no way, he's got a hotel with his mom. That's a game changer. Like if I could only get some sleep and not be in 85-degree weather at night, and like that would be so nice. But there was something so cool looking back. I didn't sleep. I took second at Fargo, going into my senior year of high school, and I didn't sleep pretty much almost that entire night before the tournament. I wasn't even cutting weight. It was just like so damn hot. But I love that aspect of Fargo. But I'm sure if I were
I get it.
Being able to train internationally, but
I get it. Okay, there's something to be said for going to the Oregon, right? Like it's in the middle of Siberia. It's negative 40 outside. Its food is not what you're used to. Yes, there is commiseration and misery, and there's you're not alone in thinking this. By the way, my son, because someone asked him today what was the best part of Fargo, and he goes Olive Garden. And
no way.
For an Italian guy from Jersey to hear that come out of my son's mouth, it was blasphemous. I looked at him, whoa, hold up. Before you, chew my head off. It was awesome because it was right after Greco weigh-ins, which is the last weigh-in that everyone will go to. It was, we had 30 people that went with our squad. We sat them down and ate the worst food ever, but we did it together. So it was kind of, there's something to be said for misery loving company.
we had the Buffalo Wild Wings, Team California. It was the Buffalo Wild Wings in Fargo, North Dakota, and I always thought it was like the best Buffalo Wild Wings ever. And I look back, it's just a normal Buffalo Wild Wings.
It's definitely just a normal Buffalo Wild Wings. There's
Same
nothing
Buffalo
special
Wild
about it.
No, but I mean, it was so great to be able to go to that Buffalo Wild Wings, like you said, with like all Team California and my mom and my dad and everyone. That was great.
That's
I mean, do you think if you could, would you move Fargo somewhere else?
So it's funny you say that. It was up for the contract was up a couple. I believe 21 would have been the first year that it was somewhere else. I could be wrong. Maybe 22. Either way, the contract was up, and USA Wrestling put it to a vote, and it was voted to stay in Fargo. Now, the other places on the ballot were pretty cool, man. Like Fort Worth was pretty high up there. It was close to being moved to either Dallas or Fort Worth. I think it was Fort Worth from what I remember. And I think that would have been cool. I think it's a whole lot easier for everybody to get to, right? Like it's directly in the middle of the country, easy for the East Coast, easy for the West Coast, certainly easy for the people in the middle of the country. So there's that. So it cuts down on costs for the state delegations when it comes to getting there. But I think the cost involved with housing people would be a lot higher. I also think that putting it in a major metropolitan area gets a little tricky, right? Like, I mean, these kids walk everywhere. Like we take for granted that like we for lack of a better term, we own Fargo for those 10 days. And, it's incredibly safe area, to send your kid to. It's there's low traffic, there's low crime, there's low, so it's like, I get it. I think the other thing is just that people involved with wrestling like to do what they've always done. And so I went to Fargo, my kids are going to go to Fargo, my grandkids are going to. So I think there's a modicum of that as well.
Yeah, that's like we don't have NCAAs. What is it, west of the Mississippi? We haven't done that in a long time.
Just doesn't happen.
Like I think that would be great. Bring it to Vegas or something. Vegas is probably the best venue, it seems, for wrestling at this point. Nobody wants to go to Florida.
Yeah. Vegas would be awesome. I'm signing up to go if you're starting the petition.
Yeah, I'll be in Vegas in a heartbeat. I mean, I'm going to be there anyway, but.
All right, let's talk about coach, brother. Give me two things, not one, two things that you were not prepared for going from athlete to coach.
I coached at AWA in between my junior and senior year in college, so I learned a good amount there, but I wasn't prepared as I jumped into college wrestling to continue to learn so much. Everyone talks about the learning curve that you have as a coach. They say you step away from competing and it seems like you learn the sport a lot more. But I think that just continues to develop and develop and develop. I thought maybe there would be like a time where that would stop. Like you fulfill all that knowledge that you were supposed to get as a coach, but it seems like that just continues to grow and grow. When you have that outsider perspective, it's really cool now. I have my guys at Cal Poly who I coach, and I'm also a competitor, so I can kind of mix the two. And, I learn a lot from my coaching. I learn a lot from my competitive side. My athletes like a lot that I'm a competitor because I can speak to them directly and they understand that. But I've learned a ton as a coach just in this last year, just talking about mentality and things like that. But another thing I guess I wasn't prepared for, I wasn't prepared for it to get me as excited to wrestle as it is, as excited to compete. I think most coaches, I mean, you guys are coaches, right? Do you ever think about coming back and competing? Like, it just makes me so much more excited to compete.
I did now. Before I was broken. Yeah.
No, so you don't think about it much anymore?
Well, I love it. I love it. My body just doesn't cooperate.
It just gets me excited. When I watch my guys compete and when they do great, like it just gets me super excited to compete and execute the kind of things that I'm telling them. And I learn a lot from my guys too, even the 18, 19-year-olds, but even when they have bad matches, right, it's almost like, God, I just want to show them the way, and I can step on the mat and show them exactly how I want them to wrestle, right? And there's a little bit of pressure there. It's hard to do that and execute that, but I get really excited to show these guys what exactly I mean when I'm telling them, hey, your job is to be a competitor, not to be a winner, right? Get excited to compete. Like when I watch you wrestle, I want to see the excitement in your wrestling. I don't want to see you hesitating and being worried. I had that a lot throughout most of college, right? And so it was really hard to step out of that. But now as a coach, it's like, God, I've learned to value more being excited as a coach than being excited as a wrestler than being a winner,
Do you ever notice yourself having higher expectations for your athletes than you would have had for yourself? And now, obviously, being that you still get a chance to compete, you can kind of see that in real time of, oh, I asked them to go do X, Y, Z, and now I'm in, 2 minutes into the second period, and I'm tired, and I don't want to go do the thing that I just told them that I want them to do.
I feel bad. I do have to check myself a lot because I had so much more sympathy for myself when I was competing in college than I do for them sometimes. I'm not
Give me an example of that.
Just like when you're going through a rough patch or like getting on the bike, right? Like if a guy's whining and complaining they're getting on a bike, I'm like, get on the damn bike. Like just listen to me. It's going to be good for you, right? But I know when I was a competitor and any of my coaches told me to get on the bike, it was like, why are we doing this? Why are we getting on the bike? This is dumb. But now with my guys, I see the value in it. I'm like, okay, it's not wrestling. I think as wrestlers, we always like the best workout for wrestling is wrestling, which is true. But cross training is super big. Anyway, like that's the kind of I don't have sympathy for them as much as I would have for myself, But I think because I did go through such a tough patch, like a rough patch in college, that I do have more sympathy than the average coach. Certainly more sympathy than a lot of coaches had for me, like growing up early on in my career when I was in middle school and high school. Like, God, I mean, honestly, the worst I ever had is when you're really young, those coaches are really hard on you. Like it's the little kids coaches who are really, really tough on their guys. College coaches are actually pretty sympathetic, it seems like.
Very. I've found that's 100% true. What do you think that is? What
Oh, I know exactly what it is.
Tell me.
I think the guys, it's just, I think going into college, it's like, this is a D1 wrestler. He's a state champ. He knows what he's doing. And if he doesn't want to do this, then don't make him do it. But when you're a little kid, it's like, and I'm the coach, I'm like, do what I tell you to do, because I know exactly, it's been my job for 10 years to coach wrestling. You should listen to me, and you shouldn't listen to yourself, period. But I think college coaches, it can be good and bad, but they give their wrestlers a little bit too much leeway. I totally appreciate that kids are incredible athletes. And, it's like we got kids coming in, when I wrestled at Wisconsin, it's like we get 4-time state champs coming in. Yeah, they know their way, but it's like, shouldn't we still be developing these guys as they come into the room and trying to teach them what college wrestling is all about? There's so much to learn, even especially when you're a freshman in college. It seems like college coaches kind of take put the brakes on a little bit and tend to let those kids do their own thing, which, I mean, there's something to be said about that. But I think I've talked to a lot of college wrestlers who are like, man, I wish my coach was harder on me in college. He just let me.
There's a lot of that. Yeah, I've actually, I found that like because they're in essence a professional athlete that has to go to class. There is a certain level of motivation that is just expected. But I think especially as like an 18, 19-year-old kid kind of comes in the room, they really need a lot of guidance, man. And I don't know that just kind of leaving them into their own devices for, I don't know, 60% of the time is always the best. No, it's not always the best. I can say that. I've seen it backfire quite a bit.
It's not. I think in any time in your career, if you have faith in, like I have faith in my coach right now, and whatever he tells me to do, I'll do it for him. So I think it's just, you have to establish a relationship with a kid where that kid will then trust you and what you're saying. And it's like, okay, when coach pushes me, it's for the right things, right? And he has my best in mind when he thinks about how to push me and how to motivate me. So I think that's a step that needs to be taken. You got to establish some sort of trust with your athlete and then push them. Some kids will break if they first day in the room and you just start, roasting
just
them.
Lighting them up. Just lighting them up.
Yeah. I don't think they like that.
No, I get it.
How do you think you find that balance? I mean, you've gotten a chance to wrestle at every different level now. How do you find that kind of trust within your coach? Are there things or techniques you're employing now that you're on the coaching side of things?
As a high school wrestler, it was a lot easier for me to buy into what my coach was saying because I wasn't that great. And, he had a very good track record and history in wrestling. He was an Olympian, and he led Calvary Chapel High School in California to 7 state titles in 10 years. So I just bought in pretty well. But I think most high school wrestlers will buy in a lot more, especially the ones who aren't that great. But I think at the college level, you really got to invest in your guys. And it helps, like I said, me being an athlete, it helps. I do exactly what I tell them to do. We come in and do footwork in the morning, which is something that I wouldn't have done when I was a wrestler in college, is footwork, because I was kind of like let's just wrestle. But I think my guys buy into it more because I do exactly the same footwork stuff that they're doing. And I expect that kind of intensity out of them. So I just think you got to establish a relationship, but also being a man of your word and doing what they're doing helps a lot. But if you're not, if you're not able to do it, there's some coaches who are, like you said, are banged up. I just think talking to your athletes, I text with my athletes a lot. I try to keep a good relationship with my athletes. Just show that you care about them, and invest in them. Not only just like yell at them and make them do footwork or the hard things, but also talk through technique and talk to them when they're going through a tough time.
I want to go back to one thing that you said earlier about learning and how the learning curve continues to trend up and to the right. How do you learn differently because you do? I don't think it's arguable. It's hard for me to put my finger on it. How is it that you learn so much more as a coach, especially as a younger coach, than you did as an athlete?
I'm not entirely sure what changes. I think you get pushed a lot.
But you do agree that it does change, though, right?
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
That's a bizarre thing.
I think what I would say is just you go into a room and you constantly have people asking you, what is it about this technique that you do that works? What is it about this technique that you do that works? And you have to have an answer for it. Like follow it like that. Kids like that when it's like that coach who you ask them a question, boom, they got an answer. All the kids loved Ben Askren because it was like the second you ask something, boom, like he's got an answer. Right. And so I think you have to be a lot more cerebral about your technique. I think about my wrestling substantially more. I think about wrestling pretty much all the time. But I think through what makes my shots work, what makes my defense work, what makes me positionally sound. When I tell a kid, you got to have better position, what exactly do I mean? So I think you just got to think about it substantially more. That's one thing, but also just watching the different levels of wrestling too helps. Seeing kids who aren't as experienced and exactly what it is that they do that doesn't work, what makes the technique not work. So it's not just about, analyzing my own wrestling. It's also now I'm forced as a coach to analyze wrestling that I wouldn't have been watching before, and to see what exactly makes my wrestling better than theirs, or the positions, my shots better than theirs. So it just forces you. Most of the time I was watching film on Satiev and Dake and Taylor. So that's kind of, that's a whole different group of guys, but to see what exactly makes, some wrestlers
to watch a guy that can't get to a leg.
Yes.
It's a really interesting thing. You suggest that younger athletes, even athletes that are not in college, start coaching in some capacity or other?
Yeah, everyone. I think everyone should be coaching in some way, shape, or form. Even high school kids, I was coaching it. Probably not coaching, but walking around the room at the Titan Mercury room when I was in high school. That helped me a lot. I think everyone should be having some sort of interaction with wrestlers who maybe aren't as good as them, and engaging with technique and what actually makes their moves work. That was tough for me when I found success, and I had a match. I outperformed myself and I did really, really good. This was in college. I did really well. I outperformed myself. And then I sat back after that great match, and there's the expectation of, you got to do this consistently now. You got to beat these top 2-3 guys now. So what went right in that match? And I wasn't prepared for that. I just couldn't sit back. I wasn't the type of guy who could just let it fly. Just go out there and let it fly. I'm a pretty cerebral wrestler. I like to think about my positions and think about exactly what makes me good at wrestling. So once I had that success and I had a match that I was like, dang, I really outperformed myself, it was tough to wrestle with that pressure after that of you got to do this consistently. So you got to know exactly what it is that made that match good. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
How much does that experience of going through and dealing with pressure, how does that impact kind of your day-to-day of coaching? Are you thinking of how to reduce pressure and things like that when you're coaching, or is it something where you have to kind of treat everything on kind of an individual basis?
I think as a coach, you almost have to focus on that more. I think we'll have some guys who come in and aren't very technically sound, and you got to teach them technique. But I could teach you the best technique in the world, but if you can't go out there and execute it because you are not mentally sound, it's not going to work, So I try to teach my guys about my mentality and how I did respond to the mental struggle in wrestling. You know, I was pretty confident throughout high school. I wrestled in college, and then I got that success in that match, and it was like it spiraled down from there. And that was where I finally, in my wrestling career, had to learn how to deal with the mental battle. And like after 4 years, man, I'm finally like climbing out of it, it feels like. So I try to talk to my guys and get them to understand how to execute their technique well, for sure.
Dude, we have placed, as a wrestling culture, we've placed a tremendous amount of emphasis in the last 10 years on mental prep, on the mental side of the game, so to speak. What are 2 or 3 things that you can think of that you've changed since college or since that kind of downward spiral that really have helped you as an athlete?
The number one thing that helped me break out of that was placing more emphasis on being a competitor than being a winner. Like that really got me excited to compete, was like not seeing myself as the winner and having the pressure of having to win, but seeing myself as I'm the guy who goes out there and compete. Whatever happens, happens. That really changed a lot for me. I stopped having those matches where I go out there and I'm like, man, I'm just not wrestling myself. Like I would even win matches and be like, God, I just can't let it fly. I don't know what it is. And I was just so worried about winning and maintaining rankings, and we've heard it all before. But I think it's hard to step out of that. You know, you hear guys say, you know, don't focus on winning and losing. Don't focus on rankings, whatever. But I would say focus on being a competitor. I think what has made the best at every sport, what makes those guys, you know, whether it's Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods, like they see themselves as the guy who wants to go out there and compete. I know a lot of guys who want to train super hard, which is great. Like we want guys at Cal Poly, every program wants guys who work super hard, but the really hard wrestlers to find are the guys who actually want to put a singlet on and go wrestle in front of a crowd. You know, like that's super hard to find. You'll find a lot of hard workers in wrestling. Like we're probably one of the hardest working sports. There's plenty of those guys out there, but finding the guy who wants to work hard or who wants to compete, like step out and put it on the line, that's hard to find. You know, that was the biggest thing for me. Seeing myself as a competitor, not a winner. And then I think, you know, if you focus on being a competitor, good things will happen. You'll end up being a winner, you know, by default. I like cross training has really helped me develop my mental game. You have to do
physical act has helped you. It has attributed to success mentally. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. I just think doing, like, just you have to be able to do things that will give you a reason to believe that you deserve to win. You know, I think I focused a lot on wrestling, but at the end of the day, wrestling can take you very far. But you see, like Kyle Snyder is doing hard weightlifting, and you know, Kyle Dake is doing his functional patterns, and David Taylor has got crazy nutrition from Training Lab. You know, so they're all, I think they're all doing something. They're all exerting some sort of discipline and something outside of wrestling that gives them an edge, that makes them believe that they have a reason to win. You know, and I think I focused a lot on wrestling, but in college.
You are jacking me up right now. You are jacking me up. I hadn't even thought about that. It's just a reason to. Doesn't matter what it is. You could put your left shoe on your right foot every day, but if you believe that it's going to make you a world champion, well, it's worth it.
Yes.
How important do you think consistency is in evaluating the quality or, you know, the level of somebody in wrestling?
Like consistency in how they train?
Just consistency in how they perform. I guess on a day-to-day basis, whether it's, you know, habits, but I think evaluating their success as a wrestler, is it just by consistent results on the mat? Is it just consistent work that they're doing on a daily basis? what role do you think consistency plays in evaluating the quality of a wrestler?
I think consistency plays an entirely huge role. Like if people who are being consistent, they have belief in their training. I mean, there's a reason that they're doing it consistently. They do it all the time because they know this is exactly what I need to do in order to be successful. And there's something to be said for sure about consistency in people's training and how they compete, right? And if you see a kid who has like just a crazy match, lights it up on the mat in one match, and then doesn't really wrestle too well the next match, that's kind of, I mean, not as a coach or anything, but I think it's just as an athlete, that should be a red flag. It's like you gotta figure something out that makes you, if you're excited to compete, you should be wrestling pretty consistent all the time. I mean, I think that there's some technical errors, whatever, but if you're wrestling super confident one match and then not confident the next match, there's something that needs to be evaluated there for sure. But for me, the number one thing that I evaluate guys on is just their excitement to compete. I think a kid can be a little bit inconsistent here or there, but if I see a kid on the mat who's excited to compete, I'm recruiting him.
Yeah, you're right. Watching the kid like light up just to get out there, just to put his straps up. Oh, that's a different animal.
Even when they lose, it's like, God, I want that kid. Like we've all seen that match where it's like that guy won on the scoreboard, but that other kid had him. Like that kid was dominating tie-ups or whatever it was. Maybe he's just a little bit more sloppy. We've all seen those matches.
Oh, for sure. My son is he loses a lot of wrestling matches at a national level right now. But number one, those matches are 4 minutes long, and he's got gas tank, and that doesn't help him at all. But number two, he's just stoked to be there. Like the dude is like, he's so excited to train for the event. He's excited to wait for the event. He's excited to, like, seriously, like he's like, Dad. And this is another thing that we talked about after Fargo, because he didn't have the best Fargo. We went 2-2 in freestyle and 3-2 in Greco. But as a first year cadet, I wasn't terribly upset with that. I think that's pretty darn good. He's like, that the coolest thing was just sitting with RJ in the summer because his buddy had a tough cut. Like it was a tough cut. Like, won't do that one again. But his buddy had a tough cut. And it was just, he's like, I learned a lot about RJ. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him and what he did. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of cool to see. But it's honing it down, but it's hard to see that though. It's hard to see that if you're not the kid's dad or coach. How do you find those kids that just love every aspect of it? Because they don't always have the same results as like the guys that finished the top 3 in Fargo.
Maybe I'm not seeing all the kids, but it seems like I feel like I have a pretty good eye for seeing kids who are excited to compete. They're moving forward, they're fighting every single position. When I see kids just like locked in a collar tie for 15, 20 seconds, like just like collar tie. Yeah, I can tell when a kid is just, exactly, trying to hold a lead or just trying not to let wrestling happen. And then there's the other kids is just like they're like all over the place. They're aggressive. I can usually see that, but you can see it too, just outside of competition. And like if a kid's watching film or if he's got a really close relationship with his wrestling coach, like my wrestling coach in high school, like when I went to every single visit, I was just talking about my high school coach. My first year in college, I was like talking about my high school wrestling coach. It was like, he's the greatest guy ever. Like I just was totally bought in. I watched film with him every day. I did this. So it was like that's a good marker for me, is like if a kid just knows a lot about wrestling, that kid's probably excited, a pretty excited kid when it comes to wrestling. But a lot of people will ask me too, like what's the number one, this is kind of a tangent, but what's the number one thing that separates kids going into college? And I think it's tough to see because like, you'll see like kids who are 4-time state champs going to college and never start. And it's like, whoa, coach, why don't those guys excel? They already had so much. They were so successful. What was it? And I'm like, to me, in my experience, it's just the kids who are excited to compete, man. Like the kids who are excited to be in a college wrestling room, they're going to excel. That's how I was. I have a pretty unique situation because, I had a twin brother, Xander, who was a state champ. And I always say he was probably one of the best wrestlers to never All-American, mostly because he injury redshirted like his second or third year in college, right? So he was done pretty quick. But I remember him having a really tough time going into college because he was very nervous about, we had a pretty good scholarship at the University of Wisconsin, and he was worried about, the expectation of being All-Americans and having that money. But for me, it wasn't really about that. I was just excited to be in a wrestling room and to scrap with guys from another part of the country, being all the way across the country from California to Wisconsin. I was just excited to be there. I remember I had WrestleStat does the rankings. I don't know if you guys have seen, but WrestleStat does rankings for like 400 guys, even like the third string guys. They know every single wrestler's in every single weight class. And they ranked me, I think there was 305 at the time. They ranked me like 303. And I'm thinking about it now. It was probably just alphabetical, W at the bottom. But I saw 303 and I was like, oh my gosh, that's what they think of me? Like, all right, I got nothing to lose. And so my whole freshman year, I had that as my screensaver on my phone. So when I would go into competition, I was like, 303? Really? That's what you think of me? Right? All right, I'm going to put it on the line. And that was, that's when I see there's, I think this is maybe controversial, but kids who have a lot of success in high school from the start of high school to the end of high school, that's tough. Because then now I think that's where the pressure begins of like, they got to do this consistently. I had success at the very end of my high school wrestling career. I was a state champ and I won Iowa Nationals. I ended up taking sixth at Fargo actually. But it was a lot easier for me because I didn't have that pressure of being the winner. You
say it's controversial. I think it's becoming less and less a controversial statement. These kids are well seasoned as they come out of high school. There's no doubt about that. You mentioned the Mark Halls and the Dayton Fixes who are ready to win national titles as freshmen. But for every Mark Hall Dayton Fix, there's probably 10 Xander Wicks that for one reason or another just don't pan out. I'm not picking on your brother, but a lot of it does have to do with injury, right? Like, because a lot of it is like, well, you put a tremendous amount of work into becoming that person at the end of your high school career, and the work it costs, right? Like it costs on your elbows, it costs on your shoulders, it costs on your neck, it costs on your knees, it costs on my hips. I mean, your hips, someone else's hips, definitely not mine. But it costs. Those gold medals are not free.
It's the work and the pressure. I think those kids have a lot of pressure early on in their high school career of having to be the guy in the lineup who wins. Like their high school team consistently is like, all right, so-and-so is at 138. We're going to get a win. And so I think those kids have that pressure of like, okay, I got to be the guy who wins for this dual meet. I got to, I'm a national champ and I want to be a national champion again. That's a lot of pressure, man, to just expect to be a national champion,
Sure. So let's switch gears to your competitive career. Coming off injury, 74, 79, 86, looking down the barrel of the 24 Olympics. Do you have an idea? Are you going to start making a descent, making an ascent? What's the concept going forward here?
I'm going up to 86. I have the frame to get very big, so that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to get big. I'm tired of cutting weight.
So bad.
Yeah,
so bad.
I'll let someone else do it, and I think it's not just if I'm light, I'm light, but I think there's something very exciting about gaining weight, and there's something so not exciting about losing weight, and I think for any kid who maybe struggles with that kind of getting excited to compete, maybe stop cutting weight because that drains on you and so much more than just like nutritionally. it's going to drain on your mindset as well. It's like nobody I've ever known gets excited about cutting weight, especially doing it for an entire season.
Oh,
That's a ridiculous amount to put yourself through, and that is not, cutting weight is not exciting at all. There's no way. And I think building muscle, going into the weight room and lifting weights and going on, runs or whatever, like that can be something that's exciting if you're doing it to build. But if you're doing it to like just shrink and like decrease the size of your body, like that's so tough, man. And then not to mention the post weigh-ins after, like that factor is really tough.
yeah. Give me two things that you are looking forward to getting up to 86. Like, so is it the big heavy lifts? Because I don't know, it doesn't sound awesome to me. But is it the metabolic conditioning? Is it tell me like, so for me, I'm excited to see what you look like competing on a wrestling mat at 86 kilos, where those guys are going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, but a little bit slower than you, right? So there's some trade-off there too, right? There's a positive trade-off there too. I'm just curious as to what you're most excited about in getting up to 86.
I'm excited to see how my technique is going to function up there at that weight. I mean, I think just wrestling at 165 for so many years, that's a weight where technique is a lot more useful. I think those guys are a lot, I don't want to say better at wrestling, but just seems like they're quicker, they're faster. There's so much, the reactions are so much faster. And I think that
we look at 65 across the NCAA every freaking year, dude. It's like, that's the buzzsaw weight. It's the buzzsaw weight, like pretty consistently, right? Like 57 can actually goes, dips and has peaks and valleys. Dude, 65 is a bear almost every year.
Just my freshman year, we had Isaiah Martinez, Vincenzo Joseph, Alex Marinelli, me, and Marsteller. And Alex Marinelli, I think, took 5th. And David McFadden. I mean, there's so many guys that I could mention who are solid, but those are the guys that are just the names. But you got a world teamer, you got a U.S. Open champion, you got a U.S. Open finalist. Like that's incredible. Like that's incredible. That's just one of those brackets. Like that's bananas, dude. Yeah, just my freshman year. And if I could use that level of competition and bring it up to 86 kg, I'm really excited to see how that technique functions. And I'm excited because I think it's going to function very well. I think just my speed, the different kind of shots that I hit, I think they're going to work very well. But I'm also excited. I like lifting, but like you said, I want to get stronger. I think I've been very long and I've kind of used my length to my advantage, which is great, but I'm still 2 inches taller than David Taylor, like at a weight below him. So when I go up, I'm still going to have my length advantage, but I really think just when I build my muscle and I'm able to actually use some of the muscles that are probably really underdeveloped right now, I think it's going to be dangerous. How do you deal with a guy like David, right? Because you got to start thinking about that. You got to start thinking about knocking off the world Olympic champion right now. Like not tomorrow, right now. Like you have to start thinking about that stuff because otherwise it'll be too late. So what is it? When you win those matches in your head? How do they go? I always have some technical values that I bring to the table, and that's across the board, whether or not I'm wrestling some guys in my room or I'm wrestling David Taylor or Chip Marsteller or anyone. I'm a pretty solid hand fighter. My philosophy has always been if I can keep someone's hands off me, they can't wrestle me. So hand fighting wise, I have a lot of really good control ties and I keep people's hands off me very well. And I think when I have wrestled the best guys, I wrestled a world bronze medalist from Ukraine last year. Like that was the strategy for me. And that was one of the marquee matches that for me in my career that helped me understand that I can do this. But that was my biggest thing was keep this guy's hands off me. Before I used to just kind of collar tie and wrestle on those ties and try to win that kind of like slugfest. But now I'm just like, if I can keep this guy's hands off me, he probably won't be able to wrestle. So that for me is one thing that stands out when I visualize myself wrestling guys like David Taylor or Hassan Yazdani or anyone at that weight, is just being someone who's incredibly tough to wrestle. And I visualize them stepping off the mat and being like, I can't get my hands on this guy. That's something that I do, clearing ties, snapping their hands off me. That's something that I see as unique in myself in my wrestling.
I think you might be one of the few people that's going to move up several weights or weight class and still have a length advantage. But one of the things to think about, obviously, is, as you get bigger and stronger, is maintaining your speed and flexibility and reactions. What are some things that you're thinking about, to retain, that advantage as you move up in weight?
I've been doing a lot of footwork recently. That's kind of helped my obviously my foot speed. I do it with a lot of my guys. I think it's super important now. I didn't even work like just body awareness when I was at 165 in college, and now I'm working body awareness, and I'm probably a good 10 pounds bigger, and I feel like lighter on my feet and everything in every sort of way, but I'm 10 pounds bigger. So footwork, different kind of functional patterns have been helping me a lot. So I think that's going to be the big key. When I had a nutrition coach say they can get me up to 210. I weigh like 182 right now. So as I do that, I'm going to have to continue to do footwork and be light on my feet. Otherwise, I'm just going to be another one of those big guys.
Yeah.
But wrestling,
it takes a while though, right? Like, so I'm glad that you're doing it, that you're getting a running start at it, because it's going to take this year to figure that out. Are you do you plan on wrestling 86 in 2023?
Yeah, I've already started. I mean, if I'm going to go up there, I'm going to stay up there. I'm not going to go up there just to try to come back down. I'm going to go up there and I'm going to try to be as big as possible, because that's the Olympic weight. We can winning a world title at 79 kg is great, but 86 kg is where it's at. That's the Olympic weight. So I'm going to stay up there.
I think we got pretty much what we need. One more question for him, Joel?
If you could change one thing about wrestling that would make it better for everyone, what would you do?
There's so many things.
I know.
I mean, we could probably talk about a ton of things. Well, so one, I think freestyle is so much better than folk style in every way, shape, or form. And people who like folk style don't like to admit it, but every single rule change that's been beneficial to college wrestling has been a rule change that is making it freestyle. The push-out rule, the three-point takedown. If you don't like it, I'm not listening to you. We need a three-point takedown. The fact that I can take you down and you get an escape point, two takedown, one escape point, and now I'm only 1 point ahead of you, that's ridiculous. Like, I would get rid of the escape point, period.
There's something to be said. Crazy? There's something to be said. I'm not hating. I don't dislike it.
Here's a good question I asked my buddy the other day, because he was pretty upset about the 3-point takedown. I was pretty upset about that. He's like, mat wrestling, we need to make mat wrestling. We need to emphasize mat wrestling. And I'm like, well, we already do. A turn is worth double what a takedown is right now. And even with a 3-point takedown, a turn is still worth more
25%
than a takedown. So we already do emphasize it, right? So that was kind of frustrating. But I asked him, I was like, because he said he was upset about the 1-point escape, me saying we should get rid of the escape. And I'm like, do you think you should get a point for getting off your back? Like, I put you to your back. If you get off your back, should that be an
congratulations?
Escape point? Yes, congratulations for getting off your back. If I take you down, it's the same thing. Why do you get a point for escape? I took you down. You get a point for getting away from my takedown.
I love it.
Side note, for 3-point takedowns, is it 3 or 3 or 3? What's the finger throw look like?
I like this, but it's officially this, right?
I think it is officially that now.
It's an official.
That's where they're going. Yeah.
So what are they doing now for? Is there's 4-point, 3-point, and 2-point near fall? What are they doing for 3-point near fall? This, and then this is takedown.
No, I think that any type of 3 is going to be right there. That's what I think.
Okay, so 3-point takedown, 3-point near fall.
Yeah.
3-point takedown, 3-point near fall.
Correct. Which is what it is in high school, right? So
yeah.
All right, and it was
wait, one more thing.
Go.
I also think that maybe we could just get rid of, like, even in freestyle, like get rid of parterre. I'm pretty upset about dislocating my shoulder, getting gut wrenched, so that might have something to do about it. But I think we can get rid of that too, like top bottom wrestling. If we really want to get fans, people like watching takedowns. Plain and simple. Like if you're watching UFC, when do people start booing?
Oh yeah, when they're in guard, for sure.
When they're in guard and they're like just belly to belly, like laying with each other. Like I'm sure if you're an MMA connoisseur of some sort, you probably appreciate the mat fighting a little bit.
Yeah,
but
I'll leave you with this. A very wise person once told me and this is when I was fighting for the intricacies of Greco. I was like, yo, you don't understand. In that hand fight, there's this underhook, and it takes so much skill to do this. And he's like, yeah, you're right. He goes, you know what else? It takes a lot of skill to paint a house. I don't want to watch anybody do it. I don't want to watch anybody do it. I was like, oh no, you're right. Oh crap, you're right. Oh no. So
you can
I was mad. No, he was right.
Yes. You can put technique into anything.
Of course.
Absolutely.
There's rock climbing, like the ones inside, like indoor rock climbing, they have competition. Terribly intricate, super skillful, total snooze fest. I'd rather watch paint dry.
Really? I think I've seen like those guys go crazy on those rock climbing walls.
The speed ones, yeah, but then like the ones where they're like doing upside, I'm like, whatever, dude, get to it or don't, just fall or don't.
Oh yes, just fall on.
Like, get off already. We get it. Like, you're just sitting there staring at a hole 7 feet away from you. Get to it or don't. All right, let's get out of here. Great job. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it. We'll catch up with you next time. Thanks, Evan.
Evan, how can everybody find you?
Sorry.
Oh, so you can find me on Instagram, Evan Wick 165, and you can find me on Athletor. I'll be doing private lessons there, and a lot of my podcasts and wrestling talks will be put up on there. So great place to get some wrestling content.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.